You're listening to the Fezcast, the Saracens fans podcast, bringing you the independent and unhinged views of the voices in our heads, as well as those of our special guests. To get in touch with us, find the Fezcast on social media and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube and more. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, hello everybody and welcome back to the Fezcast. As I'm back, Matt's back, and Barry's back on this show. Back with the Fezcast for season 5. Can't believe we've made it this far, Matt.
I don't really know what we're doing right. I think it's more that no one else wants to do something as daft as this, that we're still doing it. So, no, it's great to be back again. Yeah, great to have the confidence level. And hopefully, this is another interesting season. I'm not going to say good one because we're too amateur to be good, but yeah, we'll see how it goes, won't we?
Well, yeah, we certainly will do. We do have some changes on the Fezcast, though. Just I suppose we best talk about them very quickly. First off, we can lay this on Barry because he didn't actually come to our online AGM. But Barry, you stuck your hand up in the air and said you'd quite happily take on some lead presenting roles. And Duncan's also shoved his head above the parapet. So perhaps it'll be less of me and Matt leading the conversations going forward and a bit more from you and Duncan, Barry.
Yeah, hopefully. Just thought it'd be might change it a little bit just to have a little bit of a different host, as it were. But I can't see us changing the format too much. Hopefully, because it seems to be fairly successful.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, no awards quite yet, Matt. But I mean, before we move on, we do need to say a goodbye, but also a welcome as well. But first of all, goodbye to Jo Peake, who is moving on in her career into new opportunities, which means that she's not going to be able to commit the time to the Fezcast. But Matt, she's been an absolute stalwart over the last couple of years, and an absolute brilliant addition to the team. We will be sad to see her go from the Fezcast, but wish her all the luck in the future.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think we're all pretty proud of the fact that I think I'll say this pretty bluntly on the Fezcast. We're probably, in terms of all the clubs that have a women's output as part of their rugby offering, we're probably the ones that give more time to it than any other fans podcast. I'm not ashamed to say that, and 99% of that is down to Jo, who's been fantastic. Her enthusiasm for it, her knowledge about Saracens women has been brilliant. She's probably dragged us along with her as well, which is good to say. And the main thing really is that hopefully Jo hasn't gone. We just won't hear from her as a regular contributor as we had to, but hopefully we can have a few special shows and bring her back because it'd be wrong not to have the Fezcast without Jo Peake. But yeah, we do wish her all the best in what she's up to over the next few years. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and as one person kind of like changes and moves on a little bit, we were approached by somebody who wanted to join the team, Matt.
We were. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully, we've got a lad, James, who has been a Saracens fan for a while. Hopefully, we might hear from him on next week's show and add another new voice to what we're doing. So, as Barry said, hopefully there's a few changes, which means we're spread out a little bit, and you'll get a different dynamic each week rather than as it started, which was just yourself and me just droning on and on about the same old rubbish. So we'll have a few other people to drone on about the same rubbish instead.
But yeah, there you go. Matt always one hiding our lights under a bushel. I prefer to think that we do a pretty good job. But yeah, we're quite self-depreciating. Anyway, before we get into the main bones of it, best tell you what's coming up on the show or what might not be coming up on the show. I don't know. I've been in touch with Ollie at the club, and brilliant that we're going to get back and work with them. And hopefully, in part 2 of this show, I'm going to be talking to Kevin Sorrell. This is all very much dependent. We're recording this Sunday night in preparation for Wednesday. The boys have been out in Portugal. They're flying back. Flights have been delayed and everything, so I don't know what's happening, where his days off or anything, and I've got to work it around my new job and everything like that. So hopefully in part 2, we've got an interview with Kevin Sorrell. But in the meantime, part 3, we're going to look at the season ahead. Part 1, though, Barry, let's have a think about the summer off, really, because it wasn't really a summer off, was it? Because there was plenty of rugby still going on. And in particular for us Saracens fans, putting our Red Roses England shirts on, a few Saracens lads down in Japan and New Zealand.
Yeah, I think the Japan performance was a bit odd. I mean, you can only play what's in front of you, but Japan are really struggling at the moment, and I think your old mate Eddie Jones is in for a rough ride there. But New Zealand, they'll be kicking themselves not to have won at least one of those tests, if not possibly both of them. I mean, they weren't very far away from winning them, and as you say, our lads, Ben Earl and Mauro Itoje and that were absolutely superb down there. And how can I forget Jamie George as well, of course, captaining the side.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's the thing, isn't it, Matt? That, on the face of it, at that particular point in time over the summer, and I think we all said it, couple of things. If we'd had a goal kicker, and we're not mentioning any names, no pack drills, whatever like that, but, if someone was a little bit more accurate in front of goal, we would probably have won that first test. But to go down in New Zealand, somewhere where England just do not win. I mean, I think the last time we won was 2002, the famous Richard Hill taking on the entire All Black scrum on his own when Neil Back and Lawrence Dallaglio were sin bin. As the last time we won in New Zealand. To get that close on the face of it would be a good result. But then you look at what's happened in the Rugby Championship, and in particular, the result for Argentina, and it really does smack of a missed opportunity, doesn't it, Matt?
It does a bit, yeah. I mean, I think even before we went out to New Zealand, I think people were talking about Scott Robinson's New Zealand team being a little bit vulnerable, not being the invincible New Zealand that we've seen in the past, which is fair enough. They haven't been. But there is also at the same time, Steve Borthwick's England is a team in transition, but we've lost a few games narrowly like that now. You obviously look at the South Africa game in the World Cup, and those two matches against New Zealand, really, where you think, yeah, they were there for the taking. We had some inexperienced players out there, and we made a good fist of it. But we are coming off second best in those close run fixtures a lot at the moment. But there's plenty still to take from it. Players either making their debut or maybe 2 or 3 caps into their England career, and it is building nicely towards the next Six Nations fixtures, or the next autumn international Six Nations fixtures, and the next World Cup as well. So there's positives and negatives for sure. But I think in the long run, it's you can see the progression more than you could see it under our previous head coach. Let's put it that way.
Well, there is that, but also there is the other concern. I mean, to lose one coach could be seen to be a bit of a problem. To lose 2 coaches pretty rapidly in the way that England have done recently, Barry, it's got to be a concern, especially when, a big thing was brought up, particularly about Felix Jones coming in and what he would do in relation to sorting out a defensive bedrock on which to build future game plan.
Yeah, I mean, it was noticeable under England's previous head coach that we lost a lot of his assistant coaches and defence coaches and attack coaches and forwards coaches and back coaches and all of that. There seemed to be a regular churn of them. We all assumed that the issue was with Eddie, and you could argue that he had similar problems in Australia as well in his short period there. But for it to continue with England starts to look like a concern, because it's clearly not something, or it doesn't appear to be something related specifically to the head coach. It looks like there's something else there in the background. I mean, I saw a report. A friend of a friend of a friend said something about an unstable working environment. Now, I don't think that doesn't sound like Steve Borthwick. Obviously, we know him from Saracens as well. That doesn't sound like a Borthwick issue to me. That sounds like something deeper.
Yeah, and I suppose we won't find anything out about that until it all comes out, doesn't it? Again, yeah, as Matt said, I think there is optimism to be around there. The autumn international Six Nations, we really do need to see an improvement from England. And if we see that, all well and good, and we can see a move in the right direction, then that's fine. This is a big crunch season for them. But enough of what's gone on. Enough of that, because that's a long way off in the future. I think we need to refocus back on Saracens, because that's what we do on this podcast. So we'll have a break here, and we will suggest, hopefully, that I will have had a chat with Kevin Sorrell. If we haven't, we're going to come straight back in and have a chat about the season ahead for the Men in Black, because we'll concentrate on the men's team coming up.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
You are listening to the Fezcast, which is proudly sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association, and I'm Alison Davis, one of the SSA committee. For a £10 annual subscription, the SSA provides our members with monthly newsletters, virtual and in-person player events, away match ticket allocations, and we organise pre-match gatherings at away matches. We sponsor men's and women's players, and we support the Saracens Foundation Track Club on behalf of our members. On top of all that, every year we have a seasonal SSA badge, which is exclusive to members. Where else can you get that much value for a tenner? Join now at membermojo.co.uk/SSA, or come and see us on match day in the Oasis at the Stonex.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, hello and welcome to our first interview of season 5. And I am so happy that somebody I've wanted to speak to for a long time, someone who's been both a player and now is a coach at Saracens. Well, we do a thing, Kevin, the club cult hero, and people like Chris Chesney, and Simon Raoul, all the different people that we spoke to over the years. You're definitely one of those people. I mean, 256 appearances, was it, for Saracens? I think 256 points.
Well, I don't know about the points. But I was 304 games I played. Yeah, I know that, but I couldn't tell you the points. So, I mean, that sounds quite high. So I'll take it. Yeah.
Yeah, fair thing. So I'm thinking whether there was games where you were kicking. I can't remember too many games you kicking, but I
did do it for a year. But as the lads actually really kindly pointed out, they sent me a video of when I was kicking at Kingsholm this week. And I remember it well because it was just after half time and I had shot a goal right in front of the posts and I hit the post and it rebounded, came back to one of our players who passed it to me. And then I panicked because the E-Oars had already started from the shed and then I passed the ball to our water boy who was running off the pitch. So they took great pleasure in actually seeing that moment. I did kick for a little bit, yeah.
Well, I seem to remember that one going back in a distant darkness of time, as it were. But I mean, yeah, as I say, you've both been a player and a coach. I mean, how does it differ for you personally, and also how does it differ from your time as a player at the club and the club now as a coach? I mean, what are the differences, if any?
Well, probably the main difference is the colour of my hair, I'd say. So I used to have dark hair, and now I've got white hair from the stress. So yeah, I don't know. I suppose it's the nature of the job. I suppose when you're a player and you go home, while you're recovering, you can switch off from that. Whereas there's always something thinking about as a coach. So you're always sort of like in it. It's a bit of a way of life, really, being a coach. But I suppose in terms of how it's changed as a club, I suppose, yeah, I think when I was playing, we didn't really have an identity and we didn't really have a way of doing things. And the club is that we've established an identity and what a Saracens performance should look like. And probably it was out of consistency of playing. Like we weren't very consistent. We had good players when I was playing, but we weren't anywhere near as consistent enough in terms of what we did on the pitch. And that therefore probably led to frequent changes of coaches. And then therefore you were almost starting again trying to build something and work towards something, whereas what we've had since 2009 is a consistency in message, consistency in way of doing things. And I think we've been able to create an identity around how we want to play and how we want to be as not only as players, but also as people. So it's allowed us to try and be consistent with that and have a framework to work to. So that's been the most pleasing and enjoyable aspect of it is that we've now got an identity and our badge properly stands for something.
Absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with you. I mean, the question I was going to ask is something I tried at a much junior level, but going from playing to coaching, and I'd coached youth rugby, but then tried coaching senior rugby. Found it quite difficult. And I remember Francois Pinard talking about it as well when he went from player to coach and saying how difficult it sometimes was. I mean, how was the transition for you from player to coach?
Yeah, I suppose my last year of playing, I started getting involved and did a bit of coaching down at Barking with Alex Coughlin. And then in a moment of weakness, he called me and said, do I want to play the next year? So I ended up playing in National One and coaching down there. So, but I actually loved it. It was brilliant. It reminded me of why you play rugby in the first place, because we trained Tuesday and Thursday nights and the lads gave absolutely everything, and we were within 30 seconds of winning the league against the London Scottish team that spent £1 million that year. So that was I had 2 brilliant years experience there of I remember speaking to a couple of other people and they were like, try and make your mistakes elsewhere. And so I had a couple of years where you're trying to make your mistakes and learn from things as you go in there. And then I had another year in the academy. So again, good grounding with some good coaches there. I was under Mike Heinard, who's still at the club now, and Hilly was obviously there with Matt Davis. So we had a good little crew there to learn off. And then, I suppose when Andy left the club, I replaced Andy. And then I suppose because I ended up coaching most of the lads who had been my teammates, there was always that relationship. I'd already had that relationship with them there. So there was... they sort of understood what I was about and understood what my thoughts were, and so the conversations were pretty open around that. So I think I had a good couple of years with Barking, and then another year with the academy that sort of smoothed the path into the senior team, really.
And I mean, the one thing to say is that there's something about Saracens, isn't there, that I think more Saracens ex-players become coaches than I think quite a lot of other clubs. I mean, maybe Leicester Tigers are there or thereabouts, but even then, the guys who've been through Saracens and Leicester Tigers like Steve Borthwick and Wiggy. But, I mean, there just seems to be a conveyor belt of Saracens players moving in coaching. And the latest one, Baz Barrington, coming back to England and going to Antill to be a player coach and forwards coach for him. I mean, it's just great to see that. I mean, what advice would you give to those people moving into coaching from playing?
I suppose the number one thing that I'd say would be don't be afraid to ask questions, because initially I thought, geez, I'm a coach now, I've got to know everything, but nobody's completely rugby. Like nobody, not one player, not one coach has ever completed rugby. So you're not on your own. And the best way to solve situations is to bounce ideas around one another and ask questions. So I think don't suffer in silence. Just ask a question, and you can always get to a solution with a few good chats, whether that's over a coffee or a beer. So,
and I suppose the last thing I was going to say on that side of things is, I mean, what is it about Saracens that means that players come through the system and move into that coaching role? I mean, I know I spoke to Chris Chesney at the end of last season, and he said he was very pointed in saying that not all players can become coaches or pundits. So some players do have to go off and find different avenues after their playing career ends. But Saracens seems to produce an awful lot more. Is it really because, the boss is so good at identifying those people and bringing them on? Because that's the impression I get. And you certainly saw him last year, over the previous years, where he talks to senior players, and you see that going on, and you can see that he's developing the way that people think almost.
Yeah, I think you do become a product of your environment, and you get to understand the little bits of detail that contribute to the environment being like productive and healthy. And then not only that, but his rugby knowledge is like second to he's unbelievable, like how he thinks about the game. So I think his example that he sets for everybody is critical in terms of the day-to-day run of the club, but also in terms of the right way, or I'll say the right way, the way that we feel it should be done in a like constructive and empathetic way. So I think he's I think he's a good example of how to go about doing it, and therefore boys have then learned from him. So yeah,
fantastic. Well, let's park that there and move on to this season. And before we started recorded, we did mention that at the SSA AGM, I did hit Joe Shaw with a big question about last year and no trophies or not even a final or anything like that. I'm not going to hit you with that, but I'm going to say the new season's coming up. We're just about to start some from friendlies and everything. This is probably, though, the first season I can remember in quite a while where Saracens are going into this season's Premiership not as clear favourites. I mean, how does that change the dynamic over pre-season? Does it change the dynamic, or is it just something you've never focused on in the past, you're not focusing on now?
Yeah, I think exactly that. I think there's it's as much in moments when you're flying as when you're like on a run of poor defeats or anything like that. I think there's a lot of, you're never as bad when you lose, you're never as good when you win. So there's a lot of white noise that goes around a lot of the performances and stuff. And we talk about the bubble and the things in the bubble that we can control. And so we can only control the stuff inside that bubble, and whatever people are saying us about outside the bubble, that's up to them. Like, so we just try and focus on what we can control and how we can try and get better day to day, really. So it's not really about looking at, I don't know, like who like prediction leagues or anything like that. It's more about where we're at. So,
well, I mean, that's really good to hear, and I think that's an important thing is to have that. I suppose perception of what's going on and just focusing on ourselves. So, focusing on the club. I mean, you guys just got back from Portugal. Some pre-season preparation there. How's preparation going? You had a good close season.
Yeah, no, it's been building nicely. We've had, I think this is week 8. So, but we had a down week in between. So we've done 6 weeks of actual training. So, like, yeah, it's been good so far. Yeah, and I think that Portugal trip was a really good idea, and it was like grateful for the club for like allowing us to do that, because we got a lot of good work done on the pitch, but then because you're in close proximity to one another, you're spending so much time. There's loads of different conversations off the pitch, and you're with the change in personnel that we've had in the squad this year. It's probably been the most we've had in the last 10 years. So it was a chance to get to know those boys, integrate them into like systems and stuff. So it was massively valuable both on and off the pitch. And yeah, I think grateful to the club to doing it, and also like Warwick and Dave Jones did a load of effort, put a load of effort into the stuff off the pitch, which allowed us to understand one another better as well. So,
well, that's great. That's great to hear. And I mean, I suppose that leads me on to the next question, which is about those new players. Now, again, I mentioned the interview I did with Joe Shaw, and he was very keen to turn around and say the new players coming in are new players. They're their own men. They're their own players, whatever. You're not looking backwards. We're not saying that this is the new. I'm going to mention his name because I managed to get through the first part. We recorded the first part on Sunday night. Not mention Owen Farrell's name, but when we talked about Fergus Burke, Joe was keen to say he's not the new Owen Farrell. He's the Fergus Burke who's going to be playing for Saracens. I mean, that's important, number one. But secondly, how are the guys settling in? Are they, finding their feet within the organisation and buying into everything that we want them to buy into, as it were?
Yeah, that's. I suppose that's been one of a real pleasing aspect is how those new guys are ripped in. So I think. Well, firstly, we've got a new addition on the coaching side as well, because Juan Figlow's left, so Rob Webber's come in to replace him. So he was obviously over in America, so he started a couple of weeks late with us. So again, that time in Portugal was valuable in terms of getting to know him. So he's been at the club 2 or 3 weeks now. Peely went collecting a whack of props in the summer, so we've got 3 new props in. Obviously, one's a familiar face in Reece Carey, but Phil Brantingham and Fraser Balmain have joined. So yeah, they're cracking on, and probably a second row we signed from Doncaster called Harry Wilson, who I didn't know too much about, but I've been really impressed with how he's gone about his business so far. So that's I suppose a real pleasing aspect is that how they've just climbed into it and tried to show what they're about, really, like, and see where they fit in our model. And then, as you say, like, we've got some additions in the back line as well. We've got two new 10s, Louis Johnson and Fergus, and then Sam Spink, who's unfortunately he's obviously picked up an injury when he was over in Australia, so he's going to be a few more weeks off. He's just rehabbing at the moment. So yeah, we had to get because of Simo as well. His injury, we've signed Callum Brayley on a short term deal, so he's there. So like eight new senior guys in. So as I say, 7 of them are training, and we've seen some promising signs from all of them. And as you say, like Fergus has his there was a reason why when we were looking around at people to fill that senior 10 position, he was actually the only one we spoke to. So we had a list of quite a few and lots of video watched. But when we watched his video, we got pretty excited about what we saw. And then with a couple of calls with him, we got a feel for what he's like as a bloke, and we've not been disappointed in either of those in terms of what he's showing on the pitch or how he's fitting in as a human being. Yeah.
Well, that's great to hear. And, I think that's an important thing for us as fans, is what we want to see is those people who are, buy into that Saracens ethos. And, something that often comes up, particularly if you're having a losing time of it, that, you'll get certain noise about, the thing that really annoys me is they're not fit to wear the shirt and everything, as if that person tapping away on a keyboard would be any good at that sort of thing. But I mean, Joe was very keen to say that we need to get behind these lads and give them all the support they deserve and should respect that, Kevin.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's the same. Like, I've only mentioned the senior lads. We've had a whack of young lads that have come in who have got, like, over these next couple of years, like, so we've had quite a few people this year represent England under 18s, and even the year below went on the England under 18s tour. So there's some great depth coming through from the academy there. So again, but they're all there to carve their own way and show us what they're about. And one of those young lads actually, it stood out so much that we ended up speaking about him in a team meeting, and he was a bit embarrassed because he was just pleased to like crack on and be training with the first team. But he's such is the work that he's done. Like we felt like we had to acknowledge it because it was standing out and showing us that you can come in as an 18-year-old and show like what you're about and that you can improve the standard of the session. So he's been real good, yeah.
Oh, that's fabulous to hear. I suppose before I move on to the last big subject, just wanted to say, have you sat down and made some aims and targets for this next season, or is it very much a case of, we want to win, obviously, we want to be at Twickenham, we want our trophy back from Northampton Saints and whatever. I mean, is it that defined, or is it just a case of, look, we're going to put some, performances together and see where it takes us and how the team develops and everything around that?
Yeah, I think probably the answer you'd always say is like, we've set some targets, we've set some goals, everything like that, and we've done so much of that in the past, like with the variety of different coaches that I played under. We'd have a goal setting meeting at the start of every pre-season. We'd do monthly goal setting, but it's the most important thing you can do is understand how you're going to go about doing it and why you're doing it. And I think from day one, Brendan stood up in 2009 and said, our aim is going to be to win every game as possible. And we're going to give you the way to do it. That's the ambition, and that hasn't changed since then. So, like we judge ourselves on, really, in terms of how we go about doing it. Not just on the Saturday, but it's the habits are built during the week, and that's where you get your performance from. So we're more concerned with how we go about. What does your average day look like? Like, so some people are going to, because that's going to be the thing that allows you to grow and then perform.
Well, yeah, absolutely right. Last subjects, Kevin, before I let you get on and everything, because I'm sure you've had a busy day and there's a busy week ahead, building up to the friendly on Friday at Bedford. But we have a new club captain. Obviously, Maro Itoje, on the face of it, was, I'm not going to say an obvious candidate, because I don't think it is an obvious candidate, but he has been captaincy material all his career, hasn't he, Maro?
Yeah, I think he was part of our senior leadership team last year anyway, so he's been involved. He's been involved in that for a number of years, so he understands the thought process that goes on there and what's needed in those meetings and what's needed for the group. So I think he's been privy to that for some time. Then that's allied with what he then does on the pitch. So, like, he's a world-class consistent performer, so like he will inspire through his actions. So yeah, he was a standout candidate for us, really, in terms of replacing Owen. And as Smalley said, like, we've only had two captains in the last 10 years, really. We've had Brad Barrett and Owen. So it's a testament to the job that those two individuals did. But also it's brilliant for Maro to take that mantle on now and do it in his own way.
Well, of course, and what it does is it reconfirms, I suppose, Maro's commitment to the club. Because, I mean, let's be honest about it. At the end of every season, Maro's name will come up with some big bucks contract somewhere in the world, and everybody will say, "Oh, he's off here, he's off there, he's off wherever." Maro's 100% committed to Saracens, isn't he?
Yeah, he's under contract for a few years to come. I think what you want to try and do is marry up the club's ambitions because hopefully he sees that our ambitions to achieve things in the game as an individual, but also for more honours as a club. So yeah, I think hopefully those two things are aligned and we can work towards that.
And obviously, as well, on the back of that, is Maro will be off with England. There may be times when he's not available. The leadership group that we've already alluded to is pretty strong. Obviously, you've got the England captain in the squad as well, in Jamie George. But other players, I mean, we've seen players such as Ivan Van Zyl, who's been really stepping up, we feel, as fans, to the forefront. You've got a senior player like Alex Lazowski, who's coming back from injury. It's going to be like having a new player back, isn't it, almost, after the length of time that he's had out. And then, obviously, lads like Ben Earl, Hugh Tizard, who's becoming a senior player, whatever. They're coming through, isn't it? That leadership side of things, which is a really important thing in the game of rugby, is as strong as ever, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's there's so much going on in the game of rugby, and like Maro's obviously got he might have calling responsibilities for the line out and stuff. So he'll put other responsibilities on other individuals, because, as I said in the first thing about being a coach, like you can't be a captain on your own. So you've got to have eyes on every part of the game. So he'll have someone who he refers to for a defensive side of things. He'll have his own feel for it, but he'll have someone who he goes to for the defence, someone he goes to for the attack, someone around and then our kicking game as well. So I think there's four components there, and I think we are able to, if they've got clear and open communication, they've got some good lines to work from, that he trusts their opinion and can go to them for advice. So it's never just one person.
No, certainly isn't it? And I think we can see from this point of view that the club is progressing, it's doing everything right. It's going to be a new, exciting season, I think. It might be, slightly different to what we've experienced before. So there's a lot of names that aren't there that we've got used to. But I'm really enthused for it, and I guess you guys are really enthusiastic for the season coming up.
Yes, it's as I say, like it's it's not just this year. I think we've had we've lost some pretty big players over the last 2 or 3 years. So we lost Chris Wiles, we lost Duncan Taylor, Jackson Ray. So all these boys were good champions of our environment. So it's now time for some of the young lads to stand up and put their stamp on it and drive it with an energy and an excitement that we've seen from them so far, and it's reciprocated by how us as coaches feel and the excitement that we've got with the season coming up. Really, so it's long can't wait to rip into it. As you say, Bedford's the first hit out on Friday night, and boys are chomping a little bit.
Well, that's good to hear as well. And I mean, what can we expect from the Bedford game? Is it going to be just trying a lot of different things, more about the performance than the result, or working through things in a competitive format?
Yeah, I think the first game of pre-season is always a tricky one. Like you do all the like the high intensity sessions and all the running you can do, or the off feet sessions, but proper physical contacts and you're having to get off the floor over and over again. But I suppose there's going to be some tough moments that we're looking at how we probably respond in those, and we've got the capacity to go and go and go. So we're looking at it from a fitness point of view in terms of like how we look and how we can carry on and take the opposition to a bit of deep water, really. And then system-wise, in terms of stuff that we've tried to put in place, you're looking for really. So, and as you say, first hit out, there's bound to be some errors, but it's how we then can keep our energy and move on from that. So I think we're looking at basically what our efforts like, how we're functioning within our systems, and then how we move on to the next things, I'd say. So.
Right, that's great. I mean, Kevin, thank you for your time. Let me pass on behalf of the fan base to you guys. All the best for the coming season. We know that you're going to smash it and put all the effort in that needs to be, and that we'll all be behind the team. But we're looking forward to seeing some new faces show up and some old faces doing the business. And as I say, if you could pass on our regards and our best wishes to the team and the coaches, we'd be greatly appreciative of that.
Yeah, no problem. We will do.
Hi, this is Petrus Duplessis, and you are listening to the Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, yeah, so I'm either saying thank you, Kevin Sorrell, for a great interview, or I'm saying we might have that one in the future. We don't know at this point in time, but we do need to speak about the Saracens men. Their season starts this coming Friday with a away match at Bedford Blues, pre-season friendly, in which we're going to get to see an awful lot of new players and a new skipper, and a new season with an awful lot of people that we're going to miss, I think, purely because they've been part of the furniture at the club. And we've done very well so far to get through this without mentioning a certain lad who's going to be playing in a French discotheque and a couple of brothers and whatever. But, I think we talked about them ad infinitum, haven't we, Matt? I think we can put that onto one side. I just look at the season ahead, and the first thing to say is the new skipper. I mean, we, at the end of last season, debated who it might possibly be. And the one name that I think was the obvious one that, I'm not going to say is the easiest decision, Matt, but it's the obvious one. Maro Itoje is the new skipper.
Yeah, no, like you said, we've discussed the vast majority of the players departing all the way through last season, really, so no need to do that again, apart from Aled Davis, actually, because he went quite late, didn't he? So thanks, Aled.
Former Fezcast Player of the Year.
Exactly. Probably worth having a good nod to him. But yeah, obviously the main topic is Maro Itoje as Saracens captain. And I think if he wasn't going to be the club captain now, He never will be. So I think it is, like you say, it's the perfectly obvious choice. He's 29. The last 10 years we've had two captains, Brad Barrett and Owen Farrell, doing about 5 years each. Maro Itoje for 5 years, taking him into his mid-30s and then probably into retirement is about right. You couldn't really look past him at all. Had the respect of everyone at the club, and he has captained the team in his early career in the Premiership Cup, and then several times when the current captain hasn't been around, which isn't all that often really, when one's not around and the other one is. But he speaks brilliantly. The interview that the club did with him came across very well, as we'd expect. And he's also one of the first names on the team sheet as well. When he's around, he's going to play. He's one of the best players on the pitch. It's a simple fact. So a very, very easy, obvious choice as captain. But yeah, there's plenty of other players that will be in the mix in that leadership group, aren't there?
Well, I think that's the other thing that we've got to talk about, is the fact that you are picking Maro Itoje, who will be playing not only a lot of rugby for Saracens, but also for England. I mean, as you say, as much as he's the first name on the Saracens team sheet, Barry, he's probably the first name after Jamie George at the moment as England captain on the England team sheet. So, I think there's two things there. There may be times where Maro isn't available because of sheer weight of rugby that he will be playing. In which case, I think you need to also still look at the other people in that leadership group. And I think that's something that's come out of the club. And again, I'm not sure whether we've interviewed Kevin Sorrell or not, but certainly if we do, it will be a question I'll have asked him. But I think at the end of last season, when we knew that Faz was off, there you go, done well. I only just mentioned him now. But when we knew he was off, a number of players really did make very good auditions to be that captain, and that leaves us in really, really good place. That if Maro isn't available for whatever reason, and you need somebody else to step up, or indeed during the game, that the one concern that you might have, and we'll talk about that when we talk about hopes and fears, is are there still those leadership candidates? And actually, if you look through that team, you've got Jamie George, the England captain. You've got Maro Itoje. You've got Ben Earl, who is really developing as a leader. Ivan Van Zyl, one player that I think will make an extremely good leader, and he's coming back. And next year is going to be like having a new player. When you have a player come back from such a long injury, Alex Lazowski, Alex Good is going to be around. We've still got that spine of the team that are all leaders, don't we, Barry?
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken before about a big transition between some of the senior players who've left at the end of last season and the transition into this season. I think we've got that for another season at least, because we still have those experienced players, and we are going to need them while those new guys bed in. And yeah, the leadership group, I mean, we're going to need a group to replace the guy who was the leadership group on his own pretty much last season, or in previous seasons. And we're going to have to rely heavily on that group at various times. And there's definitely an opportunity for a Ben Earl or an Alex Lazowski actually thinking about it, because not only has he been there for a long time, but for whatever reason, he seems to be consistently overlooked for international. So I think there's a big opportunity for Loz there in the weeks when Maro isn't around.
Yeah, and again, this is a really important thing. Now, it brings me on to hopes, and I've actually said here with a bit of listening to some Keane recently, hopes and fears. There you go. There's an album from 20 odd years ago. That was a good album. But hopes and fears, because I think this year's going to be an interesting year, Matt, isn't it? I mean, first thing to say, this is the first season in 10 years, maybe 11 years. But Saracens will not be going into this season's competition as favourites. And, we talked last year about Exeter being, having lost a lot of experienced players, the likes of Luke Cowan-Dickey, Jack Noel, whoever. They kept Henry Slade, but they had an awful lot of youngsters. And we've got quite a few youngsters coming through. And as I said, Alan Davis has moved on. Does that mean that Charlie Bracken is stepping up? as that like third scrum half or sort of position, whatever. It's going to be interesting, isn't it? Because we got used to going into it being the team to shoot down, and I don't think we are that team anymore. Lots of other teams will want to shoot us down for obvious reasons, but we're not going into this next one. I think Bath are probably ahead of us. Northampton are probably ahead of us in the bookmakers' offices, Matt.
Yeah, I think so. I think even the season when we came back up again from the Championship, although we played it down ourselves on the show and said we'd be happy, qualifying for European competition, maybe getting close to the top four. I think with certainly a lot of bookmakers and a lot of people within rugby, they saw us as grudgingly saw us as favourites to win the title when we first came up, and we obviously nearly did. So yeah, this is definitely going to be that first season where we're not considered even in the top two for to win the title, possibly a bit lower than that. But so yeah, with hopes and fears. I mean, my biggest fear, and we've discussed it before already, is that results don't necessarily go our way all the time. And there's a bit of panic and a bit of worry that comes with that. And I don't think necessarily that would come from the coaching staff or the players, and I think it would actually come from us as fans. And that is really my biggest fear, because this sort of thing does need time. You mentioned Exeter and the amount of players they lost and the amount of young players that have come in for them. They now look in really good shape, which probably means they'll finally match Sam's prediction and finish last in the table this season. But we'll have to see. But I hope that we bed some of these new players in, and the chat about there being another new era of Saracens, another 5-year period, really does start to kick off this season, and that's all we can hope for, really. I'm not going to put a prediction on where we're going to finish, because I honestly have no idea. Could be anywhere.
Well, yeah, and I mean, what I do need to bring in here now is that the SSA AGM this year, unfortunately, you two couldn't make it, could you? But myself and Duncan were there, and I was able to interview both Alex Osterbury and Joe Shaw at the same time. And I hit Joe Shaw with the big question first up, which was the same question I hit Alex Osterbury with the year before, saying no big dance, no medals, no trophies. How was the club feeling? And there is obviously a hurt there because of that, and a drive to not be in that position again. However, again, Joe was very keen. I mean, he was hugely passionate, and it was wonderful to hear his passion on that evening when he was talking about this being, a competitive league. Don't get us wrong. This is a really competitive league, and last year was competitive, and that's all the best. And we said this about the women's rugby. As the women's rugby's got more competitive, it's really important that it is a competitive league. And the fact that over the last 6 years, there's been 6 different winners of the Premier. It's great. It's fantastic. Of course, we want it to be us, but we can't go into this season, Barry, expecting it to be us. But we need to get behind the players. And Joe was really, really, hugely determined to get that message over at the AGM to say, look, whatever happens, win, lose, draw, whatever it may be, we have to be behind these boys, because, it could be a difficult season. We hope it won't be a difficult season, but, This is the cloth that we've got cut for us.
Yeah, I mean, we as fans have a role to play in this, and for both the players and for us, there's an opportunity and a challenge, and it's actually the same thing. We need to get behind them, we need to encourage them, and we need to stick with them. We've been spoiled rotten is probably the phrase I would use over the last few years, with our success and our constant challenging for titles both in Europe and domestically. And now, when you look at it, you can make a case for at least 6 different sides in the Premiership winning it this season, and we're only one of those. Europe gets harder and harder every year, and yeah, a massive challenge for the players, massive challenge for the fans as well. We need to get back as fans, I think, to just going to the rugby and enjoying it for what it is, the day out, the occasion, getting behind the lads. And as you say, win, lose or draw, we need to make sure that we enjoy it, they enjoy it, and we're all pointing each other in the right direction, for want of a better phrase.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, Barry. And I think the other thing that came out of the interview I did with Joe Shaw, well, there's two things. The first thing is to say that if the players show 75% of the passion that Joe showed, then, none of us can turn around and say when a result goes our way, as undoubtedly it will do. And I mean, I don't know, can't remember how many games we lost last year, but, I think Northampton lost 6 games and still won it, or 7 games maybe. And, in years gone by, you might have lost 3 games the whole season, 4 games maybe. And we talked about seasons where, are we going to go unbeaten the whole season? That's never going to happen in a long time. But, those players are going to go out there on that pitch and they are going to show passion and determination, and we will not be able to fault their effort. And if anybody does come on any forums and try to claim that they're not making effort, I, for one, will call them out both on forums and on here, Matt.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. I think we can probably say there were a few times last season where we felt that the team lacked energy. It lacked a bit of passion at times. And I really don't think that's going to happen this season. I think there were lots of reasons for that last year. And yeah, they're potentially hitting the reset button this year. So, like I say, we're going to repeat ourselves too much, but everyone's just got to get behind this team, regardless of what happens in the first few fixtures this season. We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, and of course, the other thing that came out of Joe Shaw's interview, and I'm sure, if we have spoken to Kevin Sorrell, that will come out again from there, and everybody from the club. We're looking at new players. We're looking at a couple of players coming in, one very young lad, one a bit more established, to take over from the club's greatest ever player. He's not taking over from the club's greatest ever player. He's coming in to be the Saracens' number 10. The king is dead. Long live the king. Whatever. We wish Faz all the best of luck, and we'll keep our eyes on him on the Fezcast and everybody else, Saracens legends who wherever else they're playing throughout the world. But Fergus Burke, Louis, whatever, they're coming in to put their own mark on it, and what we've got to do is allow them to put their own mark on it. And if they don't do something as well as it used to be done, well, that's the nature of it. You might find they do things better than how it was done in the past, and we applaud that. But whatever we do, as we say, Barry, we get behind the lads, don't we, this year? And that's what we want to do, the lads and the women, and whoever, is, whether they're playing at Ampthill, we'll follow them this year as well. We just got to get behind them, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely. It's you say the king is dead. I believe reports of his demise are greatly exaggerated, although he is currently injured and hasn't actually played for his new club yet. But it's an opportunity. We will get behind them. Things will be different. They have to be different. And that's a good thing. We have to keep evolving. We have to keep reinventing ourselves as a club, and I'm sure that'll happen with the new direction that these guys can give us on the field.
Yeah, and indeed off the field as well. And I mean, I'm sure in future episodes of the Fezcast, we'll be talking about off-field developments. And I know Mark Thompson at the AGM was very clear on a lot of things that are going on, so we'll like to talk about that. Before we finish, just a couple of parish notices, Matt. Got to say happy 40th birthday to Sam. I'm surprised he's that young. I thought he was a lot older personally. But also, I'd like to say all the best to Roger Lyons as well, long-term supporter. He's not had a particularly good time of it recently. He's spent an awful lot of time in the John Radcliffe Hospital and keeping in touch with his brother Nigel, who's been looking after him as well. But Roger's hopefully on the mend. He's going back nearer to home. So everybody on the Fezcast wishes Roger all the best. And I'll say next week, you're in the hot seat next week leading, aren't you, Matt? Or is it Duncan?
I think it might be me. Yeah, I've obviously got the difficult one with reviewing a friendly at Bedford that none of us might be able to see. But it's it will be me. And another point actually on how we might play. If anyone does go to Bedford and see how we play, just remember it's a friendly and it's the first one of the season. They're a necessary evil. The ball will be dropped several times. There'll be 50 scrums in the game. they'll put about 3 phases together. It's just how friendlies work. Just remember that.
Yeah, you're not wrong, Matt, for once. Anyway, thank you, gentlemen, for your time, and thank you, everybody. Welcome back to the Fezcast. That's episode 1 of season 5, done and dusted with. But thanks, Barry, thanks, Matt, and thank you, everybody, for listening in.
This is the Fezcast.